Welcome to Tanakh Talk. I am your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of what used to be called Testimonial Tuesdays, kind of rewiring the whole thing, why I left Jesus. That's kind of the key focal point at this point with the new friend, well, not necessarily a new friend, but a friend nonetheless who new to making a visual presence on Tanakh Talk on the channel itself. So, Dayvaughn Mays, welcome to the show, my friend. It's a pleasure having you on. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very good. How are you, sir?
I am doing well. Had a little struggle with allergies over the past 3 weeks, but they're starting to clear up, which is good for that, Baruch Hashem. And, you and I, we connected, was it last year, I think?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that pre-December. I mean literally about a year ago.
A little earlier, yeah.
Yeah. And so it was very interesting to talk with you. Your journey is certain. I mean, a lot of us, our journeys have a lot of similar features, and yours does too. But like anybody else, you also have some different aspects. And people really enjoy hearing testimonies about people who are not just going with the wind and just following anything that they hear because they're gullible, but people who really studied their way and studied their way out of New Testament faith. And this is why I've got you here on the show as well. And just want to kind of introduce you to the world. Dayvaughn Mays, for those who don't know, his website is, in fact, I was going to put that up first and I forgot. Let me do that now. cloudsoftorah.com. Dayvaughn Mays has a series of books that he has written. In fact, after our testimony this week, we'll probably have about a half an hour a day. But starting next week, same time slot, we're going to start a new series which is going to cover all the aspects of his books. And so many of you know him already because how long ago was it when you did the book giveaway, Dayvaughn?
It was sometime last year, at least about 5 months ago.
There was,
give or take.
Basically, he had the first 10 people, I think it was, that reached out to him. He offered a free set of books, and he shipped them all out. And so many of you benefited from that. If you're watching this today or later, and you actually have, if you got those books, would you, just to help him out as well, and also to help the readers, go to the website where you ordered them from and give a review on his books that he did. That will certainly help, especially specifically the readers, because people who are looking to shop for books like this, who are in our mindset, need to understand deeper the value that it could be. And so with your reviews, that can certainly help that tremendously. So
yeah, definitely appreciate that.
Yeah,
you can do that on Amazon, actually. That's where the books come from.
Awesome. Very good. Well, starting right off the bat, let's just for good, tell us a little bit about your past. I mean, were you raised in a Christian household? What was your family's history background?
Yeah, so my dad comes from a Baptist background. My mother raised us as Jehovah's Witnesses, and was going to the Kingdom Hall since I was 6 years old. I lived with my mom, but on the weekends with my dad, I would stay with him and then go to church with him on Sunday. But through the week, we would go to the Kingdom Hall Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and sometimes Sunday, depending if I was with my dad or not. So, a lot of exposure to the church, a lot of information to take in, specifically dealing with the Jehovah's Witnesses. If anybody knows about them, they have a lot of literature. They cover a lot of information. So, I was able to retain a lot of the information as I got older, and with that information, I was able to ask a lot of questions because I knew the background on so many different topics. Going to church 3 and 4 times a week and reading out of the literature. Of course, we read the Bible too, but mostly out of the watchtowers and the away magazines and stuff. And then we also had these little retreats, these little conferences we would go to all the time too. At stadiums, there were stadiums full of people. So, with that background, you get a lot of questions. I noticed a difference between my dad's, church and the Kingdom Hall, differences on theology, and so I knew, something wasn't right between the both of them because all the emphasis was always on Jesus, and I was just like, well, if he's not God. As far as the witnesses is concerned, they don't teach that he's God, but Trinitarian Baptists, they do. So there was always just this division in my mind, like somebody's not right here. But of course, I never raised that question to my mom or my dad. I just kind of went to church with whoever I was going to go with. And as I got older, I began to ask questions. And the Kingdom Hall told me, well, let me back up. I was asking questions, and they said, we'll entertain your questions, but you need to get baptized. So I said, okay, I'll get baptized. I said, well, even though we need you to get baptized, you're not coming often enough, and you're not doing enough field service. Now, I've been going to this church since I was 6 years old. And as I got older, I wasn't really going on a lot of field service, meaning going around knocking on doors, if anybody knows about the Kingdom Hall. So I wasn't doing a lot of that, but I was at the actual building a few times a week. So when they told me that, I went into the book of Acts where it says that Philip baptized the Ethiopian guy who just showed up on the spot. And he wasn't doing no field service. He wasn't out passing out flyers and knocking on doors. He just showed up, say, hey, what does this verse in Isaiah mean? And he believed, and he got baptized. So I right there, that's when I left. And I never went back. And I began to study, and that's when the internet was pretty much around. I was around 20 years old when this happened, and I came across a Messianic congregation, like many of us have, and I started attending a Messianic congregation up north, and that's when I first learned a lot about Hebrew, because they were using a lot of Hebraic terms, and they were using the language to teach and breaking the words down. And I thought it was very interesting because I really didn't know about the Hebrew like that. I knew mainly, Greek texts. So even going there, it was still, and now he's not Jesus no more, right? When you go to the Messianic congregation, he's Yeshua. So now Yeshua, there was a lot of information still learning about Yeshua, and I started learning about the holidays, all the feasts and stuff. And then I still had these questions of, with all this information, why don't the Jews believe in Jesus when he was Jewish? What made them reject him when I'm reading all this information about him? And he seemed to be such an important person in their history, and he died for your sins, and of course, Paul says, there's a veil over their hearts and all these different things, but I never, ever heard a Jewish person tell me why they didn't believe in Jesus personally. I never even spoke to Jewish people. I knew some, but, I didn't know enough about their background to challenge them on anything. So one day I was sitting at home on my couch, and I Googled it. I Googled, why don't Jews believe in Jesus? And I saw a video by Rabbi Missionary, and he was debating a priest. It's about maybe a 3-hour debate, and the priest really didn't have answers to his questions, and I called myself challenging Rabbi Missionary. I emailed him and started asking him questions, and he put me in my place with the Torah, and he didn't try to convert me. He didn't try to, he didn't talk down to me. He basically answered my questions, gave me some resources. Of course, his website, divineinformation.com, Torah and science videos he has on YouTube and Facebook. Great information as far as the divinity of the Torah. But looking at those resources, I even found some different websites. That's where I came across Rabbi Singer. I came across a couple of different people who blackjews.org, just different information that I just was not aware of. And studying that information, I started to realize that when you go into the prophecies mentioned in the New Testament, which is sparked my books, actually, it's called the False Fulfillment Citation Series. And what happened was, when you actually read when one of the, Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John tell you about this was done to fulfill what a prophet said, when you go back and read that prophecy, it's not talking about Jesus. It's talking about a situation, and Jesus is placed inside of that situation. Context is omitted, verses are omitted, language is added, like it's just completely corrupted. And that was the first red flag for me, and that's kind of what made me start asking more questions.
How long ago was this, roughly? Or
At
shall I
least over
say,
10,
how long into your journey?
10 to 15 years ago was
Gotcha.
when this happened. When I started really, when I came across Rabbi Misraki, I'm 44, so I was about 30 when this happened. It was
Wow,
right around
nice.
the time my daughter was born. So yeah,
Wow.
she's 13, so it was right around that time frame. So yeah, and
I-
and the more I dug into it, I just realized, going back and reading it, this is not adding up. And then once you start realizing the false fulfillment citations are there, you start looking at other false prophecies. This generation will not pass. There's some standing here
Yep.
today who will not taste death. I mean, it just goes on and on. You will not go around the towns of Israel for the Son of Man comes.
Yep.
It's just, and you sit back and I'll be honest, I was scared. I was scared. If you deny the Son in front
Yeah.
of people, He'll
Oh,
deny
yeah.
you in front of the Father. Like, I was scared of a lot of the verses that I read, and I realized I was scared of Him and not scared of God. And so I started over. I went back to Genesis. I started learning Hebrew, and I prayed, and the Most High walked me up out that New Testament, and
That's awesome.
I thought I was Jewish. I started keeping all the laws. I thought I was full-blown Jew. Started trying to do all the 613, of course, the ones that you were able to do without the temple. Keeping Shabbat. Tried to keep kosher, even though there's a little Jewish community where I'm at, and it's not so orthodox, and it's not so welcoming. It's
Sure.
all right, but it's not a warm environment. I put it like that. Some of the people were nice. I'm not gonna say that everybody was like rude or nothing, but it was just like it was just not comfortable. I put it like that. So
I still think today the Jewish community still has a difficult time just being completely open-hearted to people coming into their environment, and especially now. There's so much more proselytizing going on, like hidden missionary work that's being
and I
exposed,
get it.
so.
I know all the Jews for Jesus are sneaky. Like, I understand
Yeah.
why they have such a resistance, to that. So that really wasn't the problem, because what happened was, with me personally, is looking into my background, and a lot of people, and we notice in the United States, there's a lot of groups, dealing with the slave trade, that say that they're Israelites, and I'm sure there are plenty of Israelites that came from the slave trade, but everybody in America that's a person of color is not an Israelite.
Right.
It's just, I'm sure there's plenty of them. It's probably hundreds of thousands, millions, whatever, but it's not everybody.
Right.
So I had to really go back and look and do my own genealogy, and what I found with my genealogy, talking to my mom and things that I knew when I was younger, but just never really dove into. I have a Native American background from the Creek Nation.
Nice.
And my mom even has our IDs and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
So it was real solid for me to find out my real background, dealing with the Native American bloodline that I have, and it even passes down to my children. But anyway, looking into that, there's even talk about the Native Americans. Some of them are Jews, because if you go into the Book of Mormon, they talk about the tribes came over here as well. So what I found with my particular tribe is that they're mostly just Christians. I'm not finding anything to connect them to Israel. I'm not saying that they don't have a connection.
Sure.
The only thing that I found was that they're descendants of mound builders, and in the mound builders, there is some connection to Hebrew, but it doesn't really specify which tribes. So it's you can speculate, but I can't live off of this speculation. So then I actually found came across the laws of Noah, which basically do not obligate people who are not Jewish to keep the 613 laws.
Right.
And in those laws of Noah, I realized that eternal covenant was given before the law of Moses, and that's pretty much where I'm at today, and that's what I teach. I teach on the TEV. Shout out to Rod and Dennis and Ross and everybody over there that helped me out, and Rabbi Todd, Pirkei Shoshanim, YPS. So they've helped me out. They got me teaching over there. I teach over there every Thursday night. And with that, that's where I'm at today, and
That's
that's
cool.
where I've been thriving. So,
What?
Baruch Hashem.
How did you have to deal with any issues like social issues with your parents and family members whenever you came out? Did you let them know right away? Did you let them know slowly? How did you handle that?
Well, my mom's side of the family is very, very not religious. Like when we were little, only my mom on my side of the family went to church. Like actually, she didn't go to church as a child. So when she came across the Jehovah's Witnesses, that was her first experience with church. So it was kind of like the first thing that came across her desk. She found it, and she got into it, just trying to learn about God, because that's a lot of my family's in Oklahoma, in Okmulgee, where the Creek Nation is. Not all of it, but a good majority. So her parents moved out here to Colorado. And I have a few cousins and stuff out here too. But overall, my mom's side of the family wasn't really a religious household. But on my dad's side of the family, I have many pastors who got their own churches, cousins that got their own churches and stuff. So they had always looked at me, since I was growing up as a witness, different anyway, because we were like the only people in my family that were Jehovah's Witnesses
Right.
on both sides. So we always had this, they already looked at me different anyway. And then when they realized that I wasn't a Christian anymore, it really didn't change nothing. It's like, okay, you went from not being what we are, to now you don't believe in Jesus. But they've never challenged me, and I've never challenged them, because I know the ones that own churches or have churches, they would have a lot to lose if they were to challenge me, and I know that would cause a huge problem. So I kind of let that be where it is, and if it came up, I would definitely debate them, or talk to them about that. But I didn't want to go around and bully them out of their religion in front of people and embarrass them, and cause problems in the family, because it would do more harm than good. So I'm kind of like waiting for the opportunities to do those things, like at family events and stuff like that. The ones
Sure.
who know what I do and what I'm about will talk on the side and stuff, but I don't make it a big deal, because I know where a lot of them stand, and from knowing their sermons and things like that, and not to say that they're unintelligent or anything like that, but I don't think that they are ready to have those conversations, because the Christian answers are not sufficient, and I know that they would lose a lot of their congregations, and I would be the blame for that. And I just didn't want to go that route. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I'd rather do it a different way, especially with a lot of elders in my family. So out of respect for them, I'm trying to do this the best way possible without trying to embarrass them or anything of that nature. I just kind of let people know what I do. If they reach out, cool. And I have a lot of people in my family that have reached out that I do study with. So it's definitely a blessing to those who have reached out, and they study for themselves. I tell them, don't believe nothing I tell you. Go get your book, look it up, ask questions. So I really had to be very careful not to go that route, because I started debating on YouTube and stuff like that, and I made the mistake of debating and going into the debate attacking the New Testament. Excuse me. Instead of just teaching what I knew, and with that, the attack mode mindset. You once you offend somebody, they're mad. They don't want to hear nothing you have to say.
Sure.
Now I wasn't rude. I wasn't like arrogant or nothing like that. But I just basically showed why I disagree with the New Testament. That's what I mean by attacking. I didn't go in and just say, well, this is what I do, this is what the Torah say. I came in and showed why the New Testament is wrong on this, why the New Testament is wrong on that. And I was just basically, going through the verses and stuff. And a lot of people liked it and a lot of people didn't. So to anybody out there, be very gentle with people who don't know what you know and don't think like you think, because they're going to take it as an offense, or you're talking down to them when you tell them that they're doing something wrong. You really want to engage them on their turf, and wherever they're at, that's what you deal with. For me personally, that's what I've learned to be the best route to get people to study themselves out of the New Testament.
Right on. That's that's actually really, really good advice for sure. You know, when people do ask, when they ask me about, you know, how to debate people, and my advice to them is don't debate them at all. I mean, if they have a good question, I mean, being a light to the nation doesn't mean you're walking around with a Q-beam spotlight and shining it in people's windows that don't
Right.
work. You know, being a light to the nation is somebody who wants your light. They'll ask you for help, and then you show them. You know, then you
Exactly.
if they ask.
Exactly.
So yeah, that general approach is massively important in keeping that line of communication open. No doubt about that. So in this journey, at what point in time did you decide that you wanted to write? I'm going to say a book because I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'll say I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure of anything. That I would assume that maybe you started off with the idea of writing one book and then you just kept going. So, what?
Well, I published my first book back in 2009 with my uncle, Gus Owens, and we wrote it. We started out writing poetry. So I was already a writer. Even in high school, one of my teachers, I think his name was Dr. Hobbs, we had a creative writing class. And I used to write all my lessons in poetry, and he would grade it, and he would put it on the board. And as long as my answers were right, he didn't care how I wrote it. So I've been a poet since I was in high school. So I wrote a whole bunch of poetry books, and actually a lot of the first books I put out, even if there's scripture in there, I wrote a lot of poetry in there explaining things from the Torah's perspective. And a lot of those books I pulled off the shelf because what I learned is, from the feedback, is a lot of people still were looking at the books with Christian eyes. So I said, well, let me pull all these books off the shelf, because all the questions I'm getting are basically, I see what you said in your book, but the New Testament says this and the New Testament says that. So I say, you know what? Anybody who's going to come across me, the first thing they're going to get is this false fulfillment citation series. And then I'm going to show them why we can't rely on what the New Testament says. And once I get this as an established book in whatever I deal with or whoever I deal with, then I'll put out the other books again and rewrite them. So then I published maybe 30 something books, but now I only have the 10 out. The false fulfillment citation series is available on Kindle and paperback. If you have Kindle, is it Kindle Direct or Kindle something? It's something with Kindle on Amazon. You can actually read them for free. I don't know if it's a Prime account, but anyway, these books were published about 2 years ago, and I haven't put any more out because I want this to be like a staple before anybody comes across the rest of my books.
Right on. So you've got 10 of them. They look like they're going to be pretty easy reads, which is good. The layout's nice. The font is big enough for people who really can't. Sorry about the green screen effect on that book.
Well, you're fine.
Yeah. But yeah, so the false doctrine of the virgin birth, was Pentecost the fulfillment of prophecy. These guys, each one of them are kind of based about the same. Most of them are about the same size. Fulfillment citation of what was that? Of Matthew chapter 2, the line of Psalm 22, and these are individual studies on these.
Yes,
there you go.
Yes, they all stand alone.
And then,
they are numbered. Excuse me, because I had to. When I created the book series for the Kindle, they made me number them. You know what I mean? So I had to number them, but you can buy any of them. They all stand alone. And what I basically did was, I went into what I call the Christian playbook. When you talk to any Christian and missionary, they're going to bring up all these different topics. They're going to bring up Psalm 22. Of course, they're going to bring up Isaiah 53. Of course, they're going to bring up the virgin birth. They're going to bring up Daniel 9. They're going to bring up Psalm 16. They're going to bring up Genesis 3:15. They're going to bring up Deuteronomy 18. You know, this is just what they do. This is how they're trained.
Sure.
They're going to bring up Pentecost. So I basically say, if I deal with where they're going to go, then they don't have nowhere to run. You know what I mean? If I can shoot down your top 10 plays, what are you going to do for the rest of the game?
Yeah, absolutely. And I find it funny. Well, it's not really funny at all. I find it interesting how, and you can testify to this as well, that it happened to get today. For example, there was a Messianic watching Rabbi Singer's show today, and he was really trying to push the Yeshua idea. And he basically brought up the idea of what does was it Matthew, or I think it was Matthew or John somewhere, where it says, what does it mean, no, First John, excuse me, what does it mean to, what did I put that at? Basically to what is sin is basically what he asked. And I said, this, breaking into the 613 commandments. Mm-hmm. And he goes, and then he began to push the Yeshua idea. And I basically asked him, I said, well, did Yeshua, how do people view Yeshua? I mean, do they think he's the lamb of, the Passover lamb that takes away the sins of the world? He goes, yes, of course, as it is written. And I'm like, well, as it is written, that's not written that way. And I said, so if Jesus put it that way, then he's changing the laws. If he changed the original intent of what the law was, then he's guilty of violating the Torah himself. And so, but point, full circle, he didn't have anything to say about that, but then he went right on to the next point about why he believes in Yeshua. I'm like, you can't. Yeshua is either whoever the Messiah is going to be. He's going to fit the entire profile. He's not going to fit part of them. He's going to fit it to a T, or he's not going to be the Messiah. And people don't like the idea of letting him go. Even if you knock down every single thing and prove it to them, they still are so fearful of letting go of this Jesus character that they're willing to hang on to it tooth and nail, and it's really disturbing. We were that way at one point in time.
Mm-hmm.
We did finally.
It's a relationship.
It is.
It's just like I mean, how many? I'm sure you got friends who have daughters that like the knucklehead boyfriends. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just that the more you hate him, the more they love him, right?
Man, that is so strangely true.
It's for some reason, good girls like bad boys. But I think it's the fear that they feel that they're going to betray Jesus and all these things, and they're scared of him, Right. And the ones who think he's God are really scared of him. And they don't have really a good knowledge of the Tanakh. Yeah. Most of the people that I talk to, the ones who really know the Tanakh well, they don't believe in this is just me personally. I'm not speaking for everybody, but the people who know the Tanakh well that are Christians do not think he's God.
Right.
And then when you show these type of people the problems in the New Testament, they can put up a better fight because they'll say, well, I'm not committing idolatry. I just think he's another prophet, and I think he has some good advice.
Right.
Okay. That's fair. Okay. Let's and what I do is I say, okay, I'll go with that. So what I found that they do is no matter where you can show the contradictions and the problems, they always fall back to the resurrection. This happened to me this weekend. I literally I got invited to a thread. Shout out to Victor, by the way, who put this thread together. I got invited to a thread. And on the thread, there was really me and only one other person responding. I'm not going to say his name. Long story short, I shot down everything that he was putting out there, showing contradictions. And he even said, I'm not going to answer any of your questions. He said this.
Right.
I would show prophecies. I went to Matthew 2:15 about Hosea and called my son out of Egypt, showed him the context of Hosea. I said, so when is Hosea talking about what's going on here? He said, I'm not going to answer that question. I'm not going to deal with any of the prophecies you talk about. So I said, okay, cool. So what he reverted to, long story short, is, well, everybody agrees with the resurrection. I said, okay. Even after showing him all the problems in the resurrection, all the contradictions. I even screenshotted a lot of Let's Get Biblical books. Mm-hmm. I went in and screenshotted all the problems, highlighted in those books, asked him to answer these questions. He says, I'm not going to address any of those things. This is what he's saying on the thread. I'm like, everybody sees really on the thread, you're running from all these problems, right?
Yeah.
He kept saying, well, you can't deny the resurrection. I said, okay, you know what? Let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's say I agree that Jesus rose from the dead and was resurrected and went to heaven. I said, now what? Did he still fulfill any of the prophecies? No, is why he got a return, right?
Right.
The temple was still destroyed. We still die. We still get sick. there's still wars in the world. What does him resurrecting and going to heaven prove? And I said, why? The reason that you're harping on this is because you have to divert all the attention away from the actual prophecies and try to focus on something.
Yeah,
but I said, here's your problem with this. Elijah and Elisha raised people from the dead. Elijah went to heaven without dying, and we don't make a big deal about that. So why would it even be a big deal if Jesus did go to heaven after being resurrected? We already see this happen to people in the Tanakh.
Right.
It says in Ecclesiastes, your spirit goes back to God who gave it, Ecclesiastes 12:7. So even if you concede to say, okay, he was resurrected and he went to heaven, now what? He still didn't fulfill the prophecies. So,
right.
So where does that put me? I still got to keep the law? Correct. Am I still going to die? Yep. Is people still having wars in the world? Yep. So even if you can give credit to all, even though I said I'm going to give you all the miracles. He did all the miracles. He raised the dead. He healed the sick, blah, blah, blah. He did all that, but why did he do all that and not fulfill the prophecies?
Yeah, right.
He was a busy man. You should have been busy on these prophecies. You see what I'm saying?
That's funny. I don't mean to, I'm not laughing like to ridicule. I mean, that's really a really good point. You know, if he had that much time, I mean, he didn't have much time here, but in the time he did have, he should have been doing it, fulfilling the prophecies if he wanted people to follow him, no doubt.
A good 20 years, right?
Yeah.
He bar mitzvah at 12, so he had 18 years to do all the prophecies.
Yep, sure enough.
So what happened? So even if you concede to, okay, he existed, he did all these prophecies, good for him. Now what? Mm-hmm. You didn't do the ones you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And you gave false prophecies, and he didn't want to deal with those. He didn't want to deal with, in Luke 10:19, it says, I give you power over all the enemy. Nothing shall harm you. I said, then why did Paul get to go around killing the Christians? How come Herod killed James with the sword?
Yep. Furthermore, that doesn't say anywhere in Tanakh that when the Messiah does come that we're supposed to worship him or pray to him or anything like that. So it's like,
no, he ain't supposed to even save you from your sins. He's a political leader.
Absolutely.
And I said, we all have, I'm sorry, just to say this real quick.
Sure.
He said, or the Torah tells us everybody's responsible for teaching the Torah to save everybody from their sins. If you call me and say, hey, Dayvaughn, I heard you was, being disrespectful to whoever, and you call and check me, and I say, you know what, I'm right about that, man. I'm sorry, I'm going to apologize. You just saved me from my sins because you got me to repent. Yep. Ezekiel 3:18, right? You tell your friend, if you warn the sinner, you saved yourself. So that's our responsibility. The Messiah is on a whole nother level. He's not here to be going around trying to tell everybody to, repent. Of course, that's going to be his message because that's everybody's message.
Sure.
But he's a political leader. He's going to tell the United Nations, all y'all sit down. I got this.
Right.
We're going to get rid of these wars. Everybody's about to come to Jerusalem to learn this Torah. It's going to be a better world.
So next week, guys, the title, we're going to start a new series. It's going to cover, it's not going to be not necessarily going to be one show per book. However, it may work out that way. It's got 10 books we're going to be reviewing. It may be a series of 10. We may even continue it after the fact. It may take 2 or 3. Like, for example, the Miseducation of Isaiah 53 is a rather big book. It's pretty thick, about the size of a Chumash already. And so that one may take a while too. But just know that we're starting a series officially next week, same time, 2:30 p.m. Central. And then we're just going to carry this thing out as far as it'll go. And that way we can kind of give you some more stuff to work on. So, Dayvaughn Mays, it's been a pleasure, sir. And thank you so much for your time, and looking forward to next week. No doubt, it's going to be a great study. Sure enough.
Well, thanks for having me. Shalom to everybody. Get at me, cloudsoftorah.com. Dayvaughn Mays at cloudsoftorah.com is the email address. Give me some reviews on the book for those seeking this Torah, and shout out to William.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.
atenta